guys, it's Jenna. In today's video, we're going to be going over the new Empowered palette from Huda Beauty. And I feel like we need to talk about this one because I do think there is a very optimal way to use some of these formulas. I also think this palette is catered to a very specific makeup user as well. I also show you how I created this beautiful eye look today and of course the swatches, so let's get right on into it. This is the Empowered palette from Huda Beauty. It is available now at Sephora on her website. It's $67 US or 88 Canadian dollars if you are Canadian like myself. The outer packaging of this is very smooth. Love the brushed gold outer packaging, and I also really love how there's kind of like that empowered right on the front and center. We do have power in brackets, which is kind of like emphasized, really, really cool. And of course you have Huda Beauty herself in the background in black and white. Looks like it's her anyway, so hopefully it is, and I didn't miscalculate that. It does say on the back the definition of empowered, which is having the knowledge, confidence, means, or ability to do things or make decisions for yourself. So this is a really nice, positive palette. Love the solid messaging behind it. If you're familiar with Huda Beauty palettes, there are a lot of different textures in her palettes, and that's why I sort of wanted to really zero in on that message if you are a makeup lover and you are a beginner. A palette that I think if you're really patient and you want to sit and play with different formulas, you'll be okay. But if you're a beginner and you're really just dipping into makeup, this could actually frustrate you a little bit because there are a few in here that kind of took me by surprise. In her previous palettes, she will put multiple textures together, and I do think that Huda Beauty does a great job being a standalone in this industry for doing that. I do find different textures in other palettes from other brands, but this is one where she really takes some really cool risks. Sometimes they pan out and sometimes they don't. So let's talk about this palette in particular. We do have 18 shades in this palette, and you can see how beautiful they are. There's some gorgeous shades that have really beautiful metallic finishes. We have some gorgeous glitters in here. We do have two gel-like, what she calls liners. You can see they're here and here. So Worthy, whoa, this is closing. Worthy and Purpose. So Purpose is sort of like a traditional black or a midnight black. And then we have Worthy, which is more of a plum, but it is a very deep plum. When you actually swatch these, I've swatched them on my hand before. They're not the best at swatch. They are quite thin in texture, and then as you drag them along the arm, they sort of seem to dissipate. They don't look as nice, but that's not really indicative of how it looks on the eye. I do think when you put a small pencil brush and sort of apply liner like this, it does a great job doing that because you're only picking up little bits of product at a time. So we also have this interesting shade here, which is already kind of a mess. I'm going to talk about that one. This one is called Manifest It. We have some beautiful shimmers as well that she's used to, and of course, this really gorgeous sort of like gradient, interesting shade. She's done shades like this in the past where they sort of have a nice creamy shimmer to them, but they have a really cool pan design inside. So I do like that as well. Of course, we have her mattes in here just to kind of solidify this palette. And we also have, of course, the deeper tones. So a few of them, when I swatched them, which I'll show you in a second, the mattes were, to me, not all consistent, unfortunately, and I don't know if it's either my palette or my arm being dry or just the formulation itself. A few of the mattes, especially in this corner and up in here, these are really, really smooth. The one here, Confident, for some reason gave me a little bit of a struggle. Didn't really show too much pigmentation on a swatch, but I did use them today, so I do have an update there. But let's get into the swatches right here, right now. So you can see here, because there's 18 shades, I had to actually do two different lines. Some of these were built up, but I'll show you my first attempt at the swatches. They were so long because of 18 shades, and I really didn't space them out properly. So they sort of wrapped around my arm and did not give me a consistent picture for you guys. So I decided to scrap that one. I'll just show you kind of just because you're curious. But the one that I like is the clear-cut, beautiful, nice lines one. But you can see that some of these shades are not consistent compared to the other, and it's just based on swatch alone. The mattes in here, she has had that in the past with other palettes I've loved, but it hasn't affected performance, which has been nice. So again, swatches are nice to give you kind of a first impression kind of hint at how it could look on the lid, but when it comes to how they actually look on the lid, that's a different story. For today's look, I played with a ton of shades. Now, Manifest is one of them that I played with, and it's already kind of a mess. If you guys remember that one shade from one of her palettes that looked like a petri dish of germs or something, like in a biolab, that is a similar kind of idea, except she's got a very interesting embossment in this. I'm gonna try to show you zoomed in on the palette when it wasn't swatched, because it's got a very distinct deep ridging in this one. I was like, why have that big indent in the center of the pan? It almost looked like somebody like shoved their finger right in the middle of it, and now there's like distinct edging on either side. According to her website, you can use the matte shadows with any brush type that you would like, and for the metallic shades, you can use a dense flat brush for a softer finish. Use your finger for fuller coverage or a sponge applicator for the metallics. For today's look, I wanted to dive into one of the mattes right away. Now keep in mind, I primed my eyes today using her Huda Beauty Faux Filter Concealer and set it with powder. Right away, I felt like this one was a tad patchy upon a first application. That could just be my primer underneath perhaps, but it did seem, you can tell it's a bit distinct when I actually show you this footage. The shade did blend luckily, but sort of like how it was dragging across the lid, it wasn't super uniform. So I'm gonna try it with other primers and see if it's a primer issue, because normally her mattes are not quite like this. Once I applied some layers to it and blended it out, it did give me a very solid base to this look. So I loved that for that, but the start of it was kind of rocky, not gonna lie. Next, I went in with Visionary. Now, Visionary is that one shade right here that has that really cool kind of soft, almost like gradient or mosaic or some kind of cool effect going on. This one is a beautiful creamy shadow as well, and I applied it just all over the lid with a fingertip. You can use a brush for this, but for these types of formulas, I do like to use a fingertip to give that nice opacity. Now you have to trust the process here because it does look kind of muddled with those two shades together right now, but just trust the process. That's what we have to do. Keep trusting the process here. Despite a little bit of a bumpy start with that first one, which sort of redeemed itself as I was blending and layering it, I had to dip in to Manifest It. So Manifest It is the messy one right here. Like I said, it has a weird like S looking embossment in it that's really, really pressed down. It's almost like a bloop, like a U. It's very, very uneven. If you pick it up with a fingertip, you have pigment on either side of your finger, but then there's like nothing in the middle because of that dip in the pan. So I knew this was going to be one of her glosses because she's done this before, something similar, a very tacky, like sticky product that I guess you could use it as a primer on its own because of the tackiness, but I completely forgot when I was initially playing with this, like how tacky it actually is. So using this with a fingertip, it was like inconsistent, super bright some spots, not bright other spots. So then I tried multiple different methods. I was like, okay, so the swipe with the fingertip is probably not the best. Let's do a tap. So the tapping helped a little bit because it was a bit more uniform, but then I remembered my trick from last time. So this is kind of what I'm saying. If this is a palette you're going to use in a rush, I do think you have to prepare yourself for all of the different formulations and then just adjust your skill from there. This is not going to be one, in my opinion, that you can just grab in 5 minutes unless you remember how to use each formula. Perfect for those creative types, perfect for the ones that just want to play with makeup for about, I don't know, 15 minutes or so when you're playing with an eye look and you want something super detailed and dimensional. The best method to put the Manifest shade over top is to actually spray a flat, dense brush with setting spray and swipe. Very, very important because then you have that kind of glossy look. A fingertip will work, but patting is best. You do get a little bit of fallout with this as well, but I have yet to try this on bare lids, which is kind of what she's sort of suggesting. So perhaps putting it over shadow was not the best thing in the world. I don't know. Got to back it up one step. For some reason, I completely did not include that I also had the other matte on my lid. So let's back up a little bit. Before the Manifest shade, I went in with Confident, which is the one that did not swatch the best. I wanted to purposely do that one, not just to add depth, but to see if it was as performative as her other mattes are that I'm used to, that I really love from her. Because that week swatch, I wanted to make sure it wasn't a dud on application. So this one is really beautiful. With a really small detailed brush, I went in with the outer corner of this. I built it up about 2 layers so you can get a bit more opacity on the lid, but it's perfect. It's so easy to use, and for a dark pigment like that, I felt like I had a lot of control. I felt like I was able to blend it out beautifully and not feel too intimidated, because as soon as the pigments start to get deeper, I have to be a little bit more careful, especially on the outer edge work, to make sure that I'm not going too crazy and it looking too stark. So now we're gonna go past Manifested, because that's when I put Manifested on, so apologies. Then I went in with another glitter called Bold Moves, which also gave me a little bit of fallout on the face, but it's okay because I'm used to this very textured metallic coming from Huda Beauty. So I put this in the very center of the lid, and that's where you have the most boom or spotlight. And then you've got some of that Manifested on either side. So you can see that it's got that gorgeous, stark, beautiful, vampy look with that really nice touch of shimmer. I do think in a palette like this, the shimmers are the showstoppers, in my opinion, because it gives you something so beautiful and glamorous to take it from a normal just purple staple palette all the way up to glamorous. Now, a lot of people are asking me the question of, can you compare the 2 golds in this palette? Because when you actually look at them kind of in the palette themselves, they almost look redundant in here. Almost like, what the heck? Like, why did she put both of them in there? But I actually do think both of them have a place, and I'll tell you why. We do have 2 golds swiped here, and they have a distinct difference on my hand. Yellow gold and really kind of warm brassy bronze gold. So to me, they're not dupes or identical by any means, and I think having a more yellow gold is going to completely change your look versus a more bronzy, warm, brassy gold is going to be a totally different look as well. So I actually do think they both belong in the palette, and they don't seem redundant to me because they can wildly change how the shimmer pop looks on your eyelid. I also applied that Big Dreams matte shade also in the lower lash line to kind of complete this look, but I paired it with a very vampy lip. I know you guys are going to ask what this is. So it's not one single product, unfortunately. We do have this matte by NARS. It's the Power Matte in Thunder Kiss underneath the Tarte Juicy Lip Plump in Peachy Beige. So I wanted to add some shine because this matte is a little bit inconsistent on my lip. It has like some lighter portions and some deeper portions by itself. I think it's how it's setting. So I do like adding that gloss to make it a little bit more even, but it does give me that really gorgeous vampy look. So I could do this like perfect for a glamorous event. And I think the lip is perfect with this eye. So my final thoughts are, do I think this palette is worth it? Absolutely, and here's why. Huda Beauty is a leader, in my opinion, in formulating totally different formulations in one palette. That being said, if that is not your cup of tea, it will only frustrate you and get you upset. So I think this is perfect for those creative types that really like to play with different stuff, and they don't mind sort of getting their hands kind of messy and trying to figure out the best way to use these things. I think if you are new to makeup, this could be surprising to you and potentially a source of frustration. But if you really, really love experimenting and, diving into different textures, Huda Beauty is a leader in this space. I do think Natasha Denona does a great job with formulations, and as does Pat McGrath. But she puts a lot of different things in one, and it's amazing to see. So it's definitely formulated, in my opinion, for a particular makeup user, one that likes to play with texture and one that doesn't mind kind of stumbling a little bit to figure out the best way to use them. My co-host is back. We are back to say goodbye. I really hope that this Huda Beauty review was helpful for you. And if you do get this look done, please tag me. I would love to see how you guys do it because I think this looks just gorgeous. Oh my goodness. I really wish you guys could just squeeze him because I just love this guy so much. Until my next one, guys, take care and stay safe. Bye, guys.